So you have a quorum.
Yes.
Okay, then we ought to call a meeting to order. It's already 4:05.
Okay, we have a quorum present, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We should be expecting a couple more. Hopefully they'll arrive.
I don't know if you're ready to just go through the attendance of those who are there now, so we established there's a physical quorum.
So, and we will do that. So, Ken, do you want to do the call for the quorum?
Yeah, sure, yeah. Okay. So, I'll just call the roll. Candace Aho.
So, not here. She said she's not going to attend. She's not going to be able to make today's meeting.
Dwayne Baines. Don't see him.
The Baines not there yet?
No, he's not. He was going to attend remotely, but I don't see that.
Okay, so Regina should just mark this down. We'll come back and update it during the course of the meeting if people come in.
Okay, Gene Chance.
Here.
Rodney Clauser.
Present.
Krista Cubulus.
Present.
Is Mr. DeCublis remote?
Yes, he is.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Barry Hall is here. Janet Hearn. Not here. James Longenecker. Not here. Juan Salva. Here in person. Cindy Sanders.
Here.
In person. Sandra Werner.
Here.
In person.
Okay.
Wait,
All right.
wait just a second. We have a couple more, Ken.
Okay.
So you want to get them noted?
So James Longenecker's here
Hi, everybody.
in person. And who else here?
Janet.
Janet Hearn is in person. Okay.
So we got,
we have 8 in person and 1 remote.
okay. So we've got a quorum for a meeting, physical quorum.
Correct.
Okay. I guess
So
agenda's
we're
next.
gonna go ahead and move along and just, you've had a chance to look at the agenda. There's some little sub-points in between there that we'll address, but, I'd ask for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Cindy Sanders and second by Larry Hall that we, approval of the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Okay, it passes.
Ken,
And
Mr. Chair, you might want to scroll down there for the, might want to scroll down just for the information for the public about participation.
Yes, that was next.
I do see 2 members of the public that are attending remotely.
Okay, can they identify themselves?
Let me give them that ability to talk to us.
I see a Peggy Hood. Is that right?
Here,
Yes.
yeah. Yes,
Welcome.
thanks.
And somebody else. Oh, Suzette Cook. Okay. Welcome, Ms. Cook. Okay, so as the agenda indicated, public can comment. They will be taken virtually as well as in person. That's on the agenda, if you put that up. And there are copies of the agenda in hard copy as well. So comments would be taken when prompted by the chair at the appropriate points on the agenda. Okay.
All right.
The comments
Yes.
limited to 3 minutes. All right.
So that information, for those of you present, is on the bottom of the agenda. And in case the two people didn't understand, at the appropriate time, we will ask for public comment, and you'll be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes at that time. We're going to go ahead on chair's comments, and some of this I'm going to just comment on, and then I'll probably ask Ken Zeichner to comment as well. I think it's a good idea that we always keep everyone updated. We got a lot done at last meeting, which was the first time we've been able to have a quorum in person for a while. So I just wanted to update that the Brown condolence letter was sent, the Scott thank you was sent, the presentation by the Springs County group was offered, and we're glad to see that Mr. Martin accepted that and is here with us today. We did send the comments on the land use development code issue to the county commission. They addressed them, and I forget, I want to say it was an April 27th meeting or something like that. I saw parts of that meeting. I've listened to it twice. They listened to it, but they decided not to include them. And Ken Zeichner and I have had a couple of discussions about this. I'm not sure exactly. I understood why after listening to it, but he can clarify it more if you would like to have more information on that. I also wanted to announce to the group on May 25th, so just next week, there is a public workshop on the countywide natural resource protection ordinance that was part of the charter amendments that was passed. It's about an 18-page document, so people are welcome to participate in that. What we need to be aware of is if there's people from this group that are participating in that meeting, and there's more than one person, then we're going to need a notice of meeting, because we can't get together and talk about items that might be coming before the committee, following the rules on that. So I guess, is anyone aware of that, or even thinking about attending any of that, or has any interest?
Mr. Chair, on that?
Yes.
That is going to be part of the county. It's expected it's going to be part of the regular county commission agenda on May 25th. I guess that hasn't been full information out about that yet, but if it's like prior meetings, it would be available for viewing on Cox 12, as well as various social media platforms. So in addition to attending the meeting, it is possible for people to hear the discussion. I don't know when it's going to be on the agenda. That'll probably be published later in the week.
So we just need to be aware if anybody plans to attend in person or make comments at it, that we could do it. I did look through it. It's a lot of new language since it's a new ordinance. And so the one thing I will say is noticeable in there, that is typical agricultural operations are exempt from it. It specifically notes that in there, but there may be other concerns of other folks. I'd also like Ken.
Mr. Chair, just on that,
yes.
to elaborate a bit quickly, because I know we got a lot on the agenda. So that, I don't know if you mentioned, is basically translating some of the mechanics of implementing the charter amendment. One of the charter amendments that was approved by the voters in November. And currently under the charter, there's a provision that if there's a conflict between the county ordinance and a municipal ordinance, in terms of the county ordinance being more stringent to protect water resources, for example, that the county ordinance would prevail. That charter amendment added some other conservation resources in that same context. So that ordinance is just to lay out the process for implementing that under the charter. As a practical matter, it would apply only within a municipal boundary if the county ordinance had more stringent standards. If it's in the unincorporated area, it's not going to be any, it wouldn't have any impact on that. The county ordinances that apply to the unincorporated area would apply. That's probably a lot of the rural area of the county. Just to give it some context.
Sure. Another thing I'd like to do, and I already asked her in person, but I wonder, could Cindy Sanders give us a quick update on the progress at the Alachua County Fair and Equestrian Center and the Extension Office?
So the progress is moving very quickly. I had a walkthrough last week, and drywall's up in our office as well as the auditorium. So our projected move-in is, or they're projected to be done in July, but I figure it will be August perhaps before we move, but they're moving right along quickly.
And I think that'll be important to discussion later on today as we plan what we want to do meeting-wise and where we're gonna meet at as we, look at that going forward. And, I'm gonna ask Ken Zeichner to comment now. There's been a couple of little modifications that's come out from the county, and one of them, affects Chris DeCubulis today, because he's joining us remotely, and if Mr. Baines joins us remotely. But do you wanna go through a couple of those changes they made, Ken?
Sure. I just want to ask one question to Ken McMurray, who's monitoring our attendees. I think we were expecting one more panelist. I don't know if she's joined the county staff. The manager said she was going to be joining around 4:15. Do you see her?
No.
You might want to, Ken, you might want to resend that invite so she's got it handy.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, as Mr. Chair and committee members, as was indicated in the email that was sent last week, the county has approved a series of new things, including updated advisory committee guidelines, which supersede some of the things that were under the emergency orders, including the one that went back to November. So, as was indicated in our email, under the county attorney's office is advised that under the current guidelines, remote committee members are welcome to participate in the meeting, but they cannot vote unless they're physically present. So we advised Mr. DeCoulis and Mr. Baines of that. And I think Ken had some conversation, or Regina did last week. So they're aware of it if they wanted to change. So that means that we have a couple of absent members. Well, you have Mr. Baines not present, so Mr. Salvo can now vote as an alternate. If you had everybody here and you had a couple of remote members, he could also vote as an alternate. Okay? They also changed the attendance. They also went back to the old attendance requirement. So you can miss, well, deal with that under the attendance report. They liberalized the attendance requirement, went back to what it was before they modified it. Prior to that, and they also removed the extenuating circumstances exception.
So the important things from my perspective is, if you're remote, which they're still allowing you to be remote and count present for attendance, you will not be able to vote. That leaves it, the opportunity for the alternate, member, at large to vote on the committee. And the other thing is the attendance requirement has been loosened up, so as long as you attend half of the last 6 meetings, you are okay attendance-wise. Did I get that all correct, Ken?
Yes.
Okay.
Before that, I
So,
think you had to be batting like 750 or something like that for your last 6 at bats. Now you can bat 500.
Okay, any other announcements from you, Ken?
Yes, as I mentioned to you, Mr. Chair, this will be my last meeting because I'll be retiring at the end of the month, and I think you'll be in good hands with Ken McMurray and Regina.
And I just found out that Ken has been with Alachua County for about 32 years.
Yeah, something like that.
32 years, and he's been staff to this committee since it started back in the early 2000s. So, and there's a lot more work that goes on behind the scenes than we all might be aware of. The staff has been very good on the stuff we need to get out, getting stuff to me. We got an electronic signature thing going, and they do a nice job of getting it prepared. We usually have a phone call before the meeting to make sure everything works as smoothly as possible. So, anyway, those are the announcements that I had from the chair's comments. One of the staff want to make the attendance report?
Yeah, briefly, I mean, Ken can pull it up. Nobody is currently in jeopardy of any issues, especially with revisions to the attendance requirements. You could see everybody's attendance record there. Okay?
Fine,
have any-
thank you.
If you have any concerns or questions, just check with Regina. You can see the new rules are on the bottom in the box. We sent that out too.
So everybody's good attendance-wise. The minutes of the last meeting, the draft minutes were sent out. So I would look for any additions or corrections or a motion to approve those minutes as distributed.
Move to approve the minutes as distributed.
Okay, moved by Larry Hall, seconded by James Longadecker.
Yep.
She's another FRE graduate with a master's degree. So, anyway, that is approved. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Okay, that passes unanimously, so I guess that's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 0.
And Mr. Chair, I see that
Yes.
the county manager has also joined the meeting remotely.
Yes, welcome.
Thank
So
you.
we're gonna move, glad you could join us. We're gonna move on with the program, and the main part of the program was a work effort by the committee. It said, here's some issues that we'd like to have a better understanding on, and so the number one priority on that list was an understanding of the Springs County issue that's come up for the last several months in the county. And you asked us to issue an invite, and we did that to Mr. Martin. Many of you may know Mr. Martin. I read a brief bio of his. He grew up in the north. I think it was New Hampshire, correct?
I actually moved here when I was 10, but I was born up there.
So he moved here and down in the Citrus County area, it looked like. Was active in FFA. Came to Gainesville in about 1990 when he entered the Food and Resource Economics for his bachelor's degree. Told me today that he finished that in 1999. He's worked in a variety of things out in the area. He's lived out in Newberry for a while. As many of you may know, he is a city commissioner out in Newberry. He's here today, though, as a person who's interested in Springs County who happens to be a city commissioner in Newberry.
Fair enough.
So we'll turn it over to you, Mr. Martin. Thanks you for coming.
Yes, you bet, you bet. Well, I think, the bio was covered, pretty easily, so that we can jump right into the presentation. Primarily, Springs County, is an effort about creating a new county out of the western half of Alachua County. Two of the biggest things that come up, or the two of the biggest questions, are why and how. These slides are just meant as discussion points. We can go into further detail if you have questions and that sort of thing. But primarily it was businesses shouldn't have to compete against their own government. That is currently happening. Alachua County is competing against private businesses. The cities have been sued, and generally speaking, particularly in the single-member districts issue, the rural part of the county, which you represent, is completely underserved from a representation standpoint. But expanding a little bit on the why is a couple of points here. The trajectory of Alachua County is all about more control, more taxes, and more friction. They are constantly creating friction among citizens, whether it's masks or taxes or regulations. That's continuing to happen as Alachua County Commission, particularly, continues to be more and more onerous. So the taxes are mentioned, but they are, and because of what happens, it's limiting what businesses can do, what people can do, and particularly what churches can do, and nothing is changing. We actually started this movement now 6 years ago with just kind of a brief discussion, but last year, because of what the county was doing, it regained a lot of momentum. People kind of saw a little bit of what I spoke of on the previous slide and wanted to continue to become involved. And here is more about the how. This has not been done in nearly 100 years. The last county to actually do it is Gilchrist County in 1925. So there is absolutely no roadmap on how this is actually done. What the state constitution does speak to is just a couple of the points in where the assets and the liabilities are divided among the territories. So think political divorce is really kind of what you want to think here. So the wife gets her part, the husband gets his part, and we kind of go on our separate ways. All of the infrastructure, roads, poles, wires, those sorts of things, pipes, have all been purchased by the Alachua County residents, and we are all currently Alachua County residents. A big misunderstanding is we don't have to actually purchase and recreate all of those things. They are just divided geographically, depending upon where the state actually divides the line. So things like school boards, or I'm sorry, schools, libraries, they're just divided, ambulance bays, et cetera. The state constitution does require a county sheriff and a county administrator to be in place. That is actually pretty much the only thing that it actually speaks to. However, there are a few different statutory things that have been presented, things like school boards and that sort of thing. But the state constitution just stipulates sheriff and a county administrator is all you actually need. We know that that doesn't necessarily work in today's world, so we would be adding into those things that are necessary for just kind of modern day life, so to speak. And strangely enough, the Constitution doesn't speak to any sort of actual mechanism for the citizens, the cities, or even Alachua County itself to have any say in the matter. Certainly, all three entities can apply political pressure, but there is not necessarily a vote that's required, proclamations that are required, or anything like that in order for approval of this to actually take place. So here's a little bit of a side-by-side between the two counties of what you can sort of expect. I'm not going to read through all of those, but just think, Alachua County, their commission is geared towards more government, more control. Springs County is geared towards more freedom. It's kind of apropos that I'm sitting here with you in the Freedom Center talking about freedom. This is really a good slide to kind of digest, and the chairman has a copy of this slide, and you guys certainly can have a digital copy. Our timeline, we're currently now in 21. We have a commitment from Representative Chuck Clemens that he will file a bill, provided that the numbers are there in the 22 session at the state legislature level. Our goal was to get a bill passed in 22, effective in 25. So there is a step-in period. Here's a little bit of the timeline that we're talking about. Give you a second to read through that. But a lot of what we have spent the last about 8 months doing is educating the public, creating a proof of concept, and beginning our endeavor into actually legislative education. A little bit of the legislation per se, hand-to-hand, face-to-face, and Tallahassee was curtailed this year because their session was largely in-person. But we've been able to make a lot of inroads despite that. And what will happen over the next couple of years is if the bill is passed in 22, there'll be a mobilization period, and things will have to actually start getting done where the rubber begins meeting the road. But I believe the county fiscal year starts October 1, 2025. And the other great advantage here is if it's passed in 22, it gives us 3 years to get all the systems needed stood up physically. And also 25 physically lines up chronologically with the 100-year anniversary of the last time the county was created, which I think is really cool. So during that period, there's also going to be lots of parallel conversations that are happening. Legislative direction, businesses need planning, individuals and citizens need planning, administrative designations. These certain entities will have to be put into software form with the state so that those can actually be taken care of. School zones will need to be created. We'll need an actual county charter approved. And then just the general overall city conversations. There's encumbered cities that will need to know who is the new county administration, the new board that's actually going to be the ones that they're reporting to. So this is kind of a little bit of an update. If you follow our Springs County Facebook page, you've already seen a couple of these numbers, but this really speaks to the feasibility. So financially speaking, the Alachua County budget is a little less than $500 million. That is serving about 270,000 residents, and here's a little bit of a breakdown where you see the Alachua County budget is 29th largest out of the 67 counties. The per capita expense is a little over $1,800. So for every man, woman, and child, divide that into 489 million, and you get about 1805. Again, this is about 270,000 people. The growth here in Alachua County is actually close to nothing. The last couple of years, it's been virtually flat, although the budget over the last couple of years has increased over 20%. Zero growth, 20% increase in the budget. That's a problem. By way of contrast, if you look at Leon County, major university, right? Similar in kind of personality. You see a lot of franchises here that are also up there. They have a budget of about $280 million, and they actually serve more people. I think it's a very telling number for you to digest. More people, much, much, much less budget. From our discussions with regards to what Springs County and the population involved, if the population is anywhere between 110 and 120,000, which is based on the 34th Street corridor being the division line, 34th Street was just arbitrarily picked because it's a state road that goes all the way through the county. No other real rhyme or reason, other than it's just kind of a geographically convenient place to put one. Whether or not the state legislature decides to put it there is completely up to them, but just, we had to have something to base some of these numbers on. If you took the 489 and divided it by the 110 or 120, we're talking about a near $200 to $216 million budget. That is most similar to what we know as Flagler County over there by St. Augustine. At 198 or 216, we are nowhere even close to being the bottom rung as far as county sizes. There are plenty of counties with a smaller budget that are operating just perfectly fine. And several of those are not what are quote-unquote the subsidized county. The good news and the good takeaway here is not only would Springs County be financially viable, but what is left of Alachua County would also be viable. There's been a lot of conjecture over the last several years about whether, you know, originally it was, oh, Springs County is just going to be a subsidized county. That's actually changed to, oh, well, Alachua County would actually be subsidized because there wouldn't be anything left. The good news is both will actually be financially viable. Smaller budget, smaller size, smaller staff, but on a pro rata share, they certainly both be completely viable. This is actually a couple of things that I said, we're just kind of getting ahead of myself. There's 38 of the 67 counties have a budget below $200 million. Here are a couple of frequently asked questions. Gilchrist was the last county. There's no mechanical voice. The taxes will remain in Springs County for a period of time. What our projection there is to drive down the cost of government, okay? Keep the taxes the same, creates a little bit of a spread. That spread can be put into a lot of the dilapidated infrastructure that Alachua County in our rural part of the county has otherwise not spoken to for years. Things like roads is primarily the biggest ticket item. The roads in, I know our area are pretty atrocious. I think there's only been one road in High Springs that's actually been addressed by the county, and I don't know forever how long, aside from a couple of that actually were, to their credit, chip sealed in the Newberry area. First responders, their retirements all transfer within the FRS system. So if you have a family member who is in the Alachua County Fire Department or the sheriff's, those FRS programs transfer. So they're not losing tenure or anything like that. Teachers, we are looking to retain the best teachers in our quote-unquote new school system. The border that we talked about is really just a beginning point for the discussion. One other big savings I think will be able to be captured is the Springs County Commission would actually hopefully be able to meet in the city chambers. Twofold reason there, cost reduction, engagement increase. If you have a county board that's meeting in the city halls, there's 5 different cities that are involved there, so they would actually see the county commission in person at least twice a year, and on some years they'd actually be there 3 times on a rotational basis. So it saves costs because we don't have the ability to big county chamber or anything like that. But the engagement, I think, is probably the bigger thing there, because a lot of the rural area, they don't want to travel and deal with the hassle that has become Gainesville in order to get to the county commission. We are hoping that there is going to be some level of property tax that can actually be replaced by a sales tax, a county sales tax. That remains to be seen. Actually seems like it might be a little bit ahead of its time with regards to the state legislature. But any opportunity that we can get the property taxes as low as possible, that gives more property rights to the individual owner. Because you know, maybe some of you already have your property paid off. If you pay off your property, you still owe taxes. You never really actually own your property. You only rent it from the government. That's something that we'd like to get away from totally. If we can't do it totally, then we'll be happy to get rid of it as much as possible. I think this is the last real kind of slide, but what we're going to be doing next, we have already been talking with cities and city staffs about the Springs County, doing this same kind of presentation. We have over 9,000 petitions. We've got nearly over 100 just on Saturday alone. So the petitions are rolling in. You can sign either online or in person. And we're continuing to contact our state representative and other state representatives for that matter, and keeping them up to date with what's going on. They've been in session for the last 3 months. They're in session this week, so access is a little bit limited. But we continue to do a lot of public engagement. We have done multiple trash pickups, particularly since this one was taken in High Springs. We've filled up, gosh, probably close to 4 different roll-off dumpsters, almost four roll-off dumpsters, just here in the last couple of months with different trash efforts that we've had. So these are just kind of a couple great volunteer capture things that are really what we want to build upon and create a foundation. Government doesn't have to do anything, or doesn't do everything rather. When government gets involved, it just becomes more expensive, more intrusive, and there's a lot of things that just don't need to be done. The end user has a much better experience when a lot of these things can be pushed out to the private sector, because they aren't involved in just trading favors, they're not involved in multiple meetings that they could otherwise be using their time to focus on other stuff that's more important. I think the last slide is really, if you want to take a picture of that, that's how you can get in touch with me. If you want my phone number, I can give that to you as well. It's 352-474-1022. That's my cell phone number. If you call and I'm available, I answer. I hardly ever let anything go to voicemail if I can avoid it. That was obviously very quick, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take a couple of those right now, whether they're from online or here in person.
So we'll start with the committee at first. Are there questions for Mr. Martin from the committee here present? Mr. Hall.
What, if anything, could be done to reconcile with Alachua County so that a separate county does not need to be formed, but the citizens in the rural areas could be more appreciative or acceptable of one government for the entire county?
I think that would take a major change in attitude on the county commission's part. Unfortunately, I think the county commission puts the staff in a very untenable situation. But the trajectory of Alachua County is still going to be more controlled. I mean, we can see what happened with the growth management amendment. You are going to see a rollout where the natural resources amendment is going to be weaponized. I think that's potentially more dangerous to the rural parts of the county that you represent than the growth management amendment itself. But, you know, they know how to get in touch with me. They've not bothered to call me. Ken Cornell has kind of largely gone the other direction. We have him on video describing us as fringe. I think that's, you know, just disappointing. But if they're willing to talk, they're willing to discuss, and they're willing to take a lot of these things off the table, then I think people are going to be much, much more receptive. But the track record is, and their history is what it is. They would have to do a lot to unwind from that. But, you know, another big thing they can do is actually commit a full-sale commitment to actually having the all-government summit. Ken Cornell is, you know, he's signaled that he wants to have it, but frankly, I'm tired of listening and I'm tired of talking about it. I want things to actually happen. And he's just kind of, from what I can tell, kicking that can down the road. I know the county manager is online here. I would implore her to try to put some pressure on the commission to make that happen. And it's not meeting with everybody individually, it's meeting with everybody all in person, all at once, so everybody hears the same story at the same exact time. When we get bifurcated off into these little silos, they know that it's very difficult for us to communicate, even in today's world. They're kind of, in my opinion, the commission's going to prey upon that. So, you know, if they're truly interested in discussion, I want tangible, actual discussions. And that's not just me speaking, that's the people that I hear from on a regular basis about it. I'm just really kind of the messenger for the most part.
Single-member districts, I know that this committee recommended that the single-member districts be on the ballot and the amendments. That did not happen. Would that be a major step towards some reconciliation? If the districts are redrawn so that the rural residents had equal representation with the major representation from the city of Gainesville and immediate surrounding area?
Yes, Mr. Hall, I think that would actually make a big difference. Everybody knows that Gainesville has their thumb on the scale. And the county, because they largely take their marching orders, the county commission that is, takes their marching orders from the city of Gainesville, that becomes very problematic. When they have their thumb on the scale, they kind of drive the bus, they know it, that's why they don't want to put it on the ballot. The county commission has every opportunity to actually put that on the ballot, and has failed to do so. The CRC that was tabled, or that was sat last year, they refused to even give it a discussion. One person actually walked off the dais that night, because those people weren't even interested in actually having a conversation. You know, I don't pull any punches. Everybody knows what the story is and what's going on. And this is the Springs County is a direct result of what the county commission has been doing. There's no doubt about it. Same thing with the sprawl that gets discussed. If the city of Gainesville wasn't beating up on GRU so bad and driving up the prices of power and water and everything else, people wouldn't be leaving the Gainesville to go to the rural county. That's just the fact of the matter. There's no doubt about it. When the county talks about the growth management and all those things, it drives people out of the city of Gainesville. So they're talking out of both sides of their mouths when they're talking about, oh, we don't want sprawl, but yet they're actually contributing to it and causing it through these policy mechanisms that they're having. And they fail to look in the mirror and actually acknowledge any of that whatsoever. So it's not the rural cities that you represent that are causing this problem. We're actually having to deal with it. I sit on the dais, I know exactly what the equation is. When they do those things, people leave. And they also, you know, try to give lip service to the fact that they're, you know, environmentally friendly and all this other stuff. But, you know, you're driving people out. Now you've got more people on the roads, you've got more carbon emissions that are happening from the roads because they're spending more time on the roads, you're creating more wear and tear, and it's a completely backwards way of thinking, in my opinion. Ms. Jean, do you have a question?
I'm just curious about where did this start 5 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
What was
Yeah.
the impetus?
I mentioned there's a couple, let's see if we can. It was actually primarily these things, but they're still going on is really the problem. I don't know that there's any actual active suits, but you have a city like Alachua that wanted to do better for itself and for its citizens, and the county completely put the kibosh on them wanting to put in a Walmart, if memory serves me correct. But you also have the county at that time was competing against private business. Where in history and where in our right minds is it okay for government to compete against private business?
Can you give an example of that?
Of course, this wouldn't be up here if I could. I'm sitting on the dais in Newberry, and we bid out a sidewalk contract, and the county public works department actually put in a bid for that project. So there's one example. I'll give you another. Currently, the county is competing against private business in the area of non-emergency transport. That's a lucrative form of medical that's lucrative. They can make money at that. So the county actually purchased a couple of ambulances, not too long ago so that they could provide that service. That service is traditionally held by, private transport companies. I actually know a gentleman who owns a ambulance service actually in, South Carolina. So those are actually two examples.
So,
And, then the last one, Ms. Jean, is really kind of what Mr. Hall is speaking to with regards to single-member districts. Yes, sir.
so just to, I follow on that, so was that bid competitive against the private bid? Is the issue that the fact that the county can bid on something, or is the issue that, because they could have lost that bid, I'm trying to understand the issues, that they should be prior from bidding in any type of bids that cities have out there, or that they, because if they're lower price and providing the service, I'm trying to understand the issue there. Are you saying?
Sure. What, do you have a job or a business?
Yes, both.
What kind of business are
I
you?
I do loans for the federal government, I'm a farmer,
Okay.
consultant business.
Okay. Well, that's kind of tough too, because government's involved in all of those things already. But listen, if you're a private business, you have to go to who to get your permits? The government. Who do you have to go to that sets the price for your permit? The government, right? Whose roads do you have to travel over to get to your job site? The government. Why do you want to compete? Why should you have to compete against your government to do that? Government's role is not to do private business or private work. It also tells you that if the Public Works Department is bidding on private business jobs, that they don't have enough work to do, they probably need to cut their staff and cut their expenses and cut their budget, which rolls down to us as citizens in the form of taxes, right? That they have capacity to compete against private business.
So,
Why do they have that many people on staff?
I'm just trying to, so it's basically government, no matter what they do, government being able to compete against private.
Right on, right, yeah, they shouldn't be competing against private business. Yeah, because what happens eventually? If they are doing all the business, what do you have? You got tyranny, right? Yes, ma'am.
So let me go backwards just a second so we make sure everyone understands. So that last question, so will you identify yourself when you ask your
Oh,
question?
sorry.
Mr.
Sorry,
Salva
sorry.
asked that last
Yes.
question, and James, go ahead, you're recognized.
Yes, ma'am.
Do y'all have my name is James Lundbecker, do y'all have a list of what, of all of these different things? Could you go to the slide where it has the comparison, the one that you were talking about could be available to us?
That one?
Yeah, do you have a breakdown of examples for each one of these points?
I could probably give them to you, but the first three we just talked about, the growth management amendment, is a intrusion on property rights. The wastewater, treatment, that has to do with the, reclamation, the runoff, things. Roads and transportation, they're not addressing them, plain and simple, they were just really not addressing them. We actually had an agreement, with staff in the city of Newberry. We had an agreement with the staff about how we were going to address the roads over in our area. It got to the city commission, and all of the work that the county, manager had done on that project was completely flushed down the toilet because the county just dismissed it. Less personal choice, you know, the bigger government gets, the less personal choices, that you have. More taxes, I alluded earlier, I'm not sure if you were in here yet, their budget has gone up 20% and the citizen population's nearly flat.
Yeah, could you go to that slide, where you had the, $500,000 budget and then the per capita?
Yep.
I just wanted to get
It's kind of two, but
so it would be 200,000 and 120,000 inhabitants for y'all. That seems like a number.
roughly, and that's just, again, assuming if the border sits at actually 34th Street. If it goes further west, that number goes down. If you get further west of about I-75, it probably starts to tail off quite a bit.
Okay.
But the great thing about the political divorce here is the people in Alachua County can speak to the people in Alachua County. So there's obviously a very, definitive point between the rural parts of the county and the city of Gainesville. So those people can just continue to preach to their own choir. In the day of where we're looking at cost cutting, maybe the city of Gainesville and Alachua County can start doing some more consolidation. They think alike, politically they think alike. The city does a lot of the bidding for the county and vice versa, so, let them be one and, save the citizens a little bit of money.
How are you measuring growth?
Oh, just statistically, you just look at it online.
Which type of growth?
Citizens, population.
Just
This one,
population
just
growth?
population.
Yeah.
They just look at the US Census data.
Yeah, no, I just didn't know what type of growth you were talking about.
Yeah, just strictly people
Okay.
living here. And these are correct. I know that.
Yeah, I'm not
I know that
questioning
they're
you.
right, yeah.
It's just anecdotally
Yeah.
hard to believe that.
I know. It's, this whole, endeavor into looking at the numbers has been quite revealing.
I have a question, one follow-up. So, I know you said 34 arbitrarily, but then you just mentioned 75, like, tails off. Have you guys done like any analysis to where like the tail off will make this idea like unsustainable? Like, so if it's, even further west than 75, will your numbers start not to be tenable, or was that something you guys haven't looked at?
It's very hard to figure out every possible scenario because there isn't a tracking mechanism. It's, people don't track population very, in pockets, so to speak. So if there's a resource, if you know of a resource to kind of draw a line on a map and say, okay, this population, we would love to have that because it would help answer some of those exact questions. So, we can take the populations of the cities. Those are usually defined online. You can find those, or you can get into the public record to find those. But to get into the rural areas, it's just not really tracked unless we actually can't even go to the tax roll data. I guess I don't have it on here. But we went into the tax roll data and we found out this very, very, very telling number. The taxable value, according to the Alachua County Property Appraiser site, it's about a little over $30 billion. Anybody want to guess how much of it's west of 34th Street? Anybody? 17 of that. 17 billion of the taxable value in Alachua County is west of 34th Street. It's about 13 billion east of 34th Street. So that tells me that the western side of the county is also subsidizing the balance of the county, just from a taxable standpoint. The county commission cannot continue to treat neither the commercial district along 34th Street to 75 as an ATM machine, and neither can the city of Gainesville by way of the GRU rates. When you talk about representation, we're not even involved, but how about those poor stats that are in the GRU service area that don't even have a voice at the city commission? That's like a double whammy. If you're outside of the city, now you're in the rural part of the county, you've got no representation from a single member district standpoint, you get in from both ends. Yes, Mr.
Larry Hall, one additional question.
Sure.
Instead of forming a new county, have you given any thought to merging with Gilchrist, which already has the basic governmental infrastructure, a small county, and the combination of whatever area of western Alachua County, if that happened, could be combined with Gilchrist, would make a larger, maybe more viable financial situation?
It was the second question that came up 6 years ago. That's certainly absolutely possible. I have kind of, just from a personal standpoint, I have wanted to help, through Springs County, as many people as possible get out from under the onerous thumb of the Alachua County Commission. That's been my personal drive. That's been a lot of the people's personal drive that's around us. So unfortunately, redrawing a line doesn't geographically, realistically play out for the people over in La Crosse, for instance. It may very well serve the city of Newberry or Archer and High Springs, but maybe it leaves out Alachua and La Crosse. So until if this possibly runs its course completely, and that's the only possibility, I'll absolutely entertain that, and I think the state legislature would entertain that well, because there are a lot of questions that just redrawing a line answers very easily and kind of serves a little bit of the same purpose. But just personally, if I can help more people through Springs County than just redrawing the line, I'd rather let that run its course completely until we actually get to that definitive point. And county lines have actually been redrawn continuously over the last century. Even here in Alachua County, pieces of Alachua County on the south end have been given to Marion County and vice versa, and just kind of a little bit of a property swap. But yes, that is a consideration and something that we have discussed as well internally.
Rod Clauser, and I have a question, and then after my question, we'll ask the public that's on if they have any questions.
Sure.
But mine is, so Gilchrist was the last county in 1925, but they tried the formation of Hialeah County in 1999 and 2000.
Oh, wow.
And Hialeah County, they tried the
right.
formation in 1999 and 2000. Didn't make it either time. And it relates to the question, so the way I understand this is the goal is to have Representative Clemens sponsor a local bill, and then you're dependent on the House and Senate in Tallahassee passing it. So is Clemens just agreed that he's going to sponsor that, or is he going to want to see the support of the legislature?
He's publicly stated that he will file a bill. Generally, the behavior of the state legislature is if the local contingency supports it and it's a local bill, they usually don't really stand in the way of that happening very much.
So can you define support there? Because, you know, if you...
Well, there's three potential representatives at play here in Alachua County. There would be Ms. Hayes Henson, Mr. Clemens, and then Mr. Perry.
Right.
So if the three of them are on board, and there's benefits for everybody to be had, like I kind of alluded to earlier, so long as they are approving of it, the rest of the legislature is probably not really going to stand in their way.
Okay, so it's the three legislators you're focused on of the approval instead of the population of Alachua County?
Essentially, yes.
Okay,
Because the way it's written, the state legislature has the balance of the say here. Now, I spoke about having over 9,000 petitions. They're not necessarily legally binding, but it was our proactive way of trying to give the citizenry a voice. Now, cities can lend a voice by passing a proclamation as well. So they can do certain things, but there isn't a requirement per state constitution that says it has to be on the ballot and the citizen has to go in there and pull the lever on it.
so a long time ago in Florida, and it goes back probably close to around 2000, the legislature actually had a group called the Legislative Committee on Intergovernmental Relations. And they did some look and some suggestions on formations of new counties, on criteria and stuff like that. Have you looked at any of that work that was done 20 years ago?
I'd be curious. No, I have not. I didn't know that it was available, or I didn't know that it existed. When was that?
It would have been back in the early 2000s. It was about the time Hialeah County.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it was right after Hialeah had failed a couple of times.
Okay.
And of course, they were suggesting more substantial criteria.
I see.
And it's been a long time since I've reviewed that stuff, but, you know, I think they talked about if a county splits off anymore, because one of the issues in Florida is we're this large urban state, but we have, and every government entity has their own definition. So the federal government definition of rural area is different than the state government, and different things like that. So in Florida, we have, I think it's 29 fiscally constrained counties, and they tend to be very small.
Correct.
And so they're getting extra legislative, so, you know, I believe that one of the, legislative funding for schools and everything like that. And then, I believe that what it did is they recommended some things, so like, you know, when you put up something like, the property taxes, you know, not having, property taxes, so schools are required to have a required local effort by the legislature. So you can't really, this would have no impact on that. So you'd have to have some type of property tax for at least schools. I mean, have you checked out stuff like that?
Yes.
So schools would
Yeah,
require
that's where the language comes in, that we'd love to get it down as low as possible. Recognizing that we can't do away with it completely because that's a little bit ahead of its time because of things just like what you said with regards to mandates for the schools. But if you recall, every time that a road tax has come up, the school tax, it's always, oh, let's make it a sales tax because everybody contributes to that. They're always selling the sales tax as a great option. So I can't imagine that they're gonna now, you know, come back against Springs County, for instance, and say, oh, well, you can't use it for a sales tax, because it completely deflates their argument for selling it all the time, as they've historically done, right?
So let me ask, is there any member of the public, we'd like to open up now, if you have a question, would like to comment, now would be the appropriate time, so please identify yourself and ask your question. Do they have the availability now?
I think so, let me double check here.
Okay, it looks like we only have 2 or 3 that are on. Go ahead, someone.
Hi, my name is Peggy Hood, and I live in the Archer area. I've lived here for 34 years. I'd just like to know what we can, as citizens, can do to help facilitate this, to get it going, or to make others aware. There's a lot of people in my area that aren't really aware. They see the signs, but they don't really know what's going on. How can we as citizens help to educate the rest of our areas,
Sure.
our communities?
Well, Ms. Peggy, if you go to the website, springscounty.com, you can download a petition and you can download a frequently asked questions brochure. You can make copies of that and pass it out to your neighbors. It's also important that you engage both Senator Perry and Representative Clemens, as well as your local city board, to make sure that your opinion is heard as well. We also have a very active discussion going on in our Facebook page of Springs County, Florida. On Facebook, you can just search through there and just make sure that you're engaged in the conversation and sharing those different things. We published a lot of events. Last week, we were at the Watermelon Festival in Newberry all day. This Saturday, as a tribute to our veterans, we're actually going to be laying flags in the Noonan Cemetery for veterans, leading into Memorial Weekend. So that's another event that you can get involved in. So we're going to meet at the cemetery at 10 o'clock. But contact your representatives and contact your neighbors with the petitions and the brochures. That would be a great thing to do as well. If you think there is enough interest and you want to have myself or one of our ambassadors come talk with your group, we're happy to do that as well.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Are there any other questions from the public?
Suzette, you always seem to have questions when you're writing articles. Do you have any questions? I'm here directly in front of you.
You've been pretty clear and straightforward. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, the chair has a copy of the printed out PowerPoint.
And we will PDF that and send it out to the whole committee.
Okay, yeah, and I'm sure you probably can send out the digital version as well. But I've also left a couple of the copies of the petitions and the trifolds too. Other than a couple of edits on the trifold, that's pretty much up to date. Okay?
Okay, thank you for coming, Mr. Martin.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
very good presentation. I think it was important that we hear directly from, Martin on the issues. This committee, of course, is an advisory to the Alachua County Commission. And I would like to see us as a report back to the commission to suggest some items that we would recommend that the county commission consider to see if there can be any way that some of these grievances can be addressed and resolved, from the point of the county. So, one of the issues I would suggest, and being in the rural area, and again, I'm speaking now as a member of the committee, I will not express my personal opinion on this matter, but one of the issues that I believe I hear a lot is that the rural residents have minimal representation or no representation because of the way the districting is done, in the county. This committee tried to get, single-member districts on the, charter revision. That did not happen. I think that's something that is very important that be considered, although it's a number of years out. That's an important issue. That's one of the primary things that I see. The second issue that I see is the roads in the rural areas. They're in terrible condition, as most of us who live out there know and drive on them. They're mostly potholes. I don't see that money is being allocated. I think if I remember, there was only $3 million a year allocated towards road repair when we had a presentation from the county on the roads. That's another major issue, that funding should be upgraded, for more road work in the rural areas. And maybe some of the other members of the committee have some other ideas that we could include in that, request to the county commission.
So I have a question for you, Mr. Hall, and I don't think any of us here knows the answers. So, when I see the roads, it raises a flag for me. So do we know how many roads, somebody surely got the information, how many roads are Alachua County, how many are state of Florida, how many municipalities and different things like that? And then, you know, I've worked a lot with counties throughout the state and also with the state legislature over time in my academic career when I was still working and doing that. But one of the issues is, so counties have gas taxes that they can do, optional gas taxes and stuff like that. Not all counties have, but several's gone up to their maximum amount. But one of the issues that I've observed over time as an applied economist is that the road repair in a lot of areas is related to the gas taxes. And what's happened over time is fleet mileage has increased. Those things aren't indexed for inflation anyway. That's a state level type issue. But I mean, I guess, and I don't disagree with the thing you're saying, Larry. I just wonder how much more information we really need to understand this, because these are really sort of complex issues.
That's a good, issue. Maybe we should have somebody from the county come and present those, to us.
Cindy?
We've had, Ramon from Public Works here, was probably here a couple, what has it been, 3 or 4 years ago, maybe?
Oh, no, he's appeared since then.
Okay.
And he appeared, last time Ramon appeared was when we were talking about some of the litter issues.
Litter, yeah. But as far as roads, we had, and at that time, there was another engineer with the county, and he's gone. But, we had them come, but it's been maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and he laid out all the roads that were county, all the roads that were state, the priority, so maybe we should have Ramon.
Well, and what made me even think that is the issues they've been trying to address within the city of Gainesville that relates to University Avenue. Who owns the road, who has the authority to give it, who has to spend the money and stuff like that. And I just know from my personal perspective, I've probably heard some of that stuff, but I don't think any of it's current. And for me to even make any educated decisions on anything, I would need to get some more information and data related to stuff. You know, I just wonder what the gas tax looks like, without being indexed to inflation and fleet mileage increasing. You know, what's the implications of that gonna be long-term if we move more to hybrid vehicles or electric vehicles? You know, there's really some really complex issues on some of this from my perspective.
Mhm.
James?
James Longenecker. I know that the Chamber of Commerce, the Florida Chamber of Commerce, has been working to pass a bill on gas taxes or tag taxes for electric and hybrid vehicles because of that issue. Additionally, just to add to what Mr. Hall was saying, if the argument is that, you know, Gainesville is kind of this central hub that we as rural people have to commute to, a lot of times for employment, thinking about the 2 hospitals that are here and obviously the large institutions, what kind of things can we do from a county perspective to reinvigorate the life in the rural towns that are in our county so that people can have a livelihood where they're living rather than needing to commute? It's a very large question, but if we're talking about mini grants for, you know, agriculture, maybe there are some sort of, business development grants that could be given for, people to re-enliven, you know, towns like Evanston, Florida, or, I don't know.
Yeah, and that may be tied to issues like broadband accessibility and a
Exactly,
variety
yeah,
of
just
other things.
livability and ability to work, in the modern economy and be able to support a rural lifestyle.
Any other comments by committee members? Well, if not, we can come back and we can address this some more. We have some things to talk about for future meetings later today. But also, in essence of time, we'll probably move on to the next topic that we have for us today. But this definitely can be brought back. As you think about it some more, we can talk about it some more. So, the next presentation is going to be by Sean McClendon, who's the Strategic Initiatives Manager for Alachua County. He wants to talk to us about a small producer agriculture support grant. I talked to Sean. I think he was out here before and visited with us before Commissioner Prizia was a commissioner about local foods and stuff like that. So I'm going to turn it over to Sean and let him tell us and give us an update on that and anything that you might like from the committee perspective.
Thank you very much. And I'm trying to remember what I sent in for slides because that was a week ago, and I think I forget most of what I do from a week ago. But I'll go by memory, Mr. Chair. Appreciate you having me here today.
So Sean,
Yes,
you
sir?
also Sean, this is Ken. You sent a short narrative on this that was circulated to the committee as well. Not the PowerPoint to the committee, but they received a few pages of some material that you provided that we sent on the Alachua County Small Producer Agricultural Capital Support Grant. Has the background there. It was about 4 or 5 pages or more that was sent to the committee.
Yes, we got that.
All right. Yes, thank you, Ken. I appreciate that. And it has slightly evolved since it was sent out last week. We've been making improvements to it as we go forward because we're taking input from everyone on how we can make sure that it achieves the goals of the commission. Broadly speaking, the county commission wants to have greater equity, economic opportunity for all of the citizens. They also have many goals related to local food systems and improving our local agricultural system. That's contained within Alachua County's economic element specifically. Recognizing these things, there's also opportunities for the small producer, and this could be the small rancher, it could be the small farmer. What we're looking at supporting here are the small local farms that make somewhere on the order of $1,000 to $250,000 a year, is what we're targeting. So those enterprises that just need a leg up, a little bit more capital, that could be more economically viable if they could purchase sanitation equipment, if they could purchase extra fencing, if they could make some modest modifications to providing utilities on site so that they could get more product to market. These are the folks that we're looking at supporting with this mini grant opportunity. This is a pilot grant methodology that we're laying out today. It's not the final form. We're still talking to the community. The ultimate goal, if you want to go forward, the ultimate goal is to return to the board on June 8th with any recommendations we have, plus any recommendations from this committee as to how we could improve the form of it. We would like to roll out, if we have the funding for, at least 2 $5,000 grants for this summer, to put it out there as a pilot, see how it works, and then if it's successful, perhaps come forward next year with a slightly larger program and see if that works. Again, we're targeting small farmers making no more than $250,000 a year. The point spread is invested on the lower end of the spectrum. So right now we're looking at farms that make closer to $1,000 to $75,000 a year. There's an emphasis on just capital expenditures. So this would not go to support operations. So again, things that are tangible on site, so utility upgrades, feeding troughs, cleaning equipment, processing equipment, those things that can help a producer, a farmer or rancher, someone that has an aquaculture operation, beekeeping, move product to market for human consumption. We'll be looking at the viability. Do they have a reasonable business plan? And it wouldn't have to be exhaustive. We realize that, you know, if you're a small farmer, you're probably not thinking of a multi-page effort to submit an application. We wanted to make this as simple as possible. This is kind of the antithetical CAP grant. If you're familiar with the CAP grant process, it's a reimbursement-based process. It takes many, many weeks probably to put together a successful application. The intent of this is it to be a one-page response. It's meant to be, if you qualify, if you score well, if the board recommends you, it provides immediate funding so you can expand your operation and grow your business. It also has a priority on equity. It recognizes that if you are Black, if you're an indigenous farmer, if you are a person of color, you might not have been, or if you're a woman, you might not have been given the same considerations within the system. So it does allow for some extra points for those considerations so that they have an opportunity to benefit from this program as well. So it's not the only consideration, but it is part of the overall point spread. This is some of the eligible operations and activities. We try to define them. We're not looking to do subsidies for a horse farm. We're not trying to do composting type operations. You can see for the equipment and activity that would be eligible, irrigation systems, gliding tractors, point of sale systems, things that you might, need to help you sell a product at a farmer's market or move it to a wholesale distributor or take it to market with a maximum request of $5,000 with one funding opportunity per year. In essence, it's a fairly simple application. It's meant to be simple. It's meant to be easy. It's meant to be targeted to those very small operations that just need an opportunity to better improve what they have to support them in our system, because if we have a greater diversity of farms and farmers and agricultural operations going on in our community, if they can be more viable, then we have a better local agricultural system. That's the concept behind this mini grant opportunity. And with that, I'll take any questions or any suggestions for improvement, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so let's open it up for questions or suggestions for improvement for Sean. Anybody have any input? James?
James Longenecker. So what would the, final, would this just be what people see when they're applying?
Yeah.
Okay. I wonder if having, I mean, obviously this you'll have for them to look at, but maybe having, some list with checkboxes or like just an other checkbox and they could write it in. Or, I don't know, just to get them, make sure that they read the instructions. And then I may have mentioned this, I don't know if, but there's a National Young Farmers Coalition grant that's similar to this, except for it does cover, operation costs. So it will cover like fees or, you know, like variable costs that a business might have. But I wonder if getting in touch with them about their point system could be helpful for y'all's kind of like back of the house.
National Young Farmers Association?
Coalition.
Coalition.
They do their, I think that the timing is really good to have it over the summer for farmers to, when they're chilling and trying to plan for next year is good. Theirs, I think, closes, theirs closes in the early spring, which is a really busy time for us, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think part of having this as just a pilot is to really test and see what works, how can we improve communications on this, how can we improve language. But I know that, you know, when I'm sitting down and Cindy's providing input and we're getting input from various people, our equity officers, kind of helping us, guiding us through this in terms of language and, you know, speaking as a bureaucrat, you know, we want to see certain things some ways, be very clear what we mean, but that doesn't necessarily translate well if you're just a small rancher or a small farmer. You might not think that way. So we're trying to make this as accessible as possible, to recognize that so that it's as easy as possible to apply for. And you don't see it in this draft, but we were just working on a draft this morning where we provide some example responses. So especially for the viability questions, we're not looking for an exhaustive business plan on how do you plan to expend this and what's the return on investment going to be. We're trying to provide very simple, matter-of-fact, common sense responses that we anticipate someone saying, if I had this, then it would do this for me. So that they can see what we're looking for as a pertinent example. I'm trying to leave things as much as possible in a checkbox format, so that it doesn't leave too much to guess at. What are they asking?
Next question? Anybody got one?
I was just thinking
Yeah, I have
about,
a question.
Hold on for a second. Cynthia Sanders has the floor.
so I was just thinking, and I've been working and trying to help and edit, but, and I know I'm slow on that sometimes, but, I was just thinking, if they're a small producer in Alachua County and they are receiving, the Greenbelt exemption through the tax collector, then they have a farm plan, because now the tax collector in Alachua County is requiring a farm plan. So, that might be something that they could just include, and that would just about answer every question that you know, that you're talking about here. It wouldn't hurt to catch it.
A good point that was brought up to me was we want to make sure that this current generation of farmers has an opportunity to thrive and grow their operations, but there's a new generation of farmers that are just coming up, and maybe they don't have a farm plan in place yet. Maybe they don't even have a piece of dirt yet, but they're going to get access to some, and they got a bright idea. Is there an opportunity for that farmer that's thinking entrepreneurially to also apply, even if they don't have a history of income? Because right now we're saying, do you have an operation, are you making a minimum of $1,000, but no more than $250,000? Do we also have I'm putting it out to the committee, do we also have a checkbox on there that says, do you have a right idea? I mean, I'm open to any thoughts and suggestions, or is that a different opportunity area?
James Longenecker, is it okay if I?
Sure.
Sorry, I don't know the protocol
That's fine.
quite yet. I don't think so. I think that they need to, I mean, farms are businesses, and so they need to figure out the way that they're gonna start up their business and get something going before they get free money. Otherwise, if you don't have proof that you're doing something that works, then essentially we're giving taxpayer money away to failing, potentially failing. I mean, people who are gonna make it in farming are gonna make it in farming whether or not they have the $5,000. So I don't think that that's a good, or that that's the same thing.
So the targeted, the example that I think we're shooting for, who is the person that this would be most pertinent to? And there are examples that exist out there. Say you're a very small rancher, you've got only a couple of head of cattle, and you cannot get into the slaughterhouse. I mean, you're getting shut out by hunting season, you're getting shut out because the big meat producers are going through, you can't make an appointment to get in and slaughter your animals. So you have to keep your head of cattle on the ranch for longer than you anticipated. So they might only need a couple of $1,000s worth of barbed wire and fence posts to secure their cattle until they can make that appointment at the slaughterhouse to move them to market. That's the type of operation we're thinking about servicing with this grant. They're out there, they're widespread, they exist, and I think we're gonna find out how big of a demand this is, and at roughly a $10,000 request from the board, maybe up to two grants to be issued, I think we'll get a sense. We'll get a sense in a hurry if this needs to expand or contract or go away, or if there isn't any real demand for this type of service.
So that answers one of the questions I had. So it's 5,000 maximum per individual, but you're looking at the total commitment to start at about $10,000?
Yes, the total budget of, so we could do up to 2 grants, 5,000 each.
Okay. And so, when I read through it, I mean, I think it would be good. I think they may fall some of these others, but I think beginning farmers, if there could be a way to figure out to get them in there. I have to ask a stupid question. So somehow back when I was at the university, some of you may remember there was this tobacco education program, and it was to buy out tobacco production. And somehow the University of Florida got allocated that money, and somehow I reminded someone they got allocated that, and somehow I got put sort of in charge of that program. And so those guys had to get rid of equipment that they were growing tobacco. And the state and the grant thing had an auditing trail. Okay, so I guess if you're giving $5,000 to a person for which isn't a large amount, but is the county going to have an audit trail to make sure the money's spent like it's supposed to be spent and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's the thing of how do you deploy funds at a fairly small amount, and what amount of administrative burden are you requiring? And I go back to the CAP example. The CAP example is a perfect opportunity if you are a very large, very robust nonprofit group that wants to provide services in the community. You have administrative staff, you have a history of managing large-scale grants, and you're able to report back, provide detailed reports, sometimes monthly, if not quarterly reports back on what you spent it, how you spent it, your payroll records, receipts and documentation. And so the question that I would ask this body, and maybe you have a greater sensitivity, if you're a small rancher making maybe $10,000 a year, and you tell me you're going to go get some 3 rolls of barbed wire at $300, do I say, well, can you just show me the receipt? Is that good enough for reporting? Or do I make them like a CAP program? You're going to give me a detailed receipt and accounting of all this, your IRS records, and show me you're a nonprofit, and a presentation to the Board of County Commissioners at the end of the fiscal year. Using an extreme example, but that's kind of the level that we use right now for reporting back to them. And is there a satisfactory medium that this committee would recommend a receipt is okay for reporting back again to prove that this has been spent accurately. Right now, at the bottom of the form, there's a checkbox that says, everything I'm submitting is true and accurate. And go. So we're trying to keep the spirit of making it as simple as possible. But is there a threshold that you all could recommend to us that at least show your receipts that you purchased it?
James, you go first, and then I'll have a thought on that as well.
James Longenecker. I think that there should be a time limit for them to spend the money, like they need to spend it within 3 months. Or I don't know what the time limit should be for y'all from a fiscal perspective, but yeah, then you can, from an administrative risk side, you wouldn't have to chase them down, for their receipts years from now or whatever, and, it's not hard to snap some pictures and send an email with your.
I think you had a question from someone on the Zoom side.
Right, and we'll get to that. I want to get the questions of the committee first.
Well, I mean, this committee member, I believe.
Okay. So, Chris, the Cumulus, I believe you were trying to ask a question, maybe?
Yes, sir. Well, had a question on the deliverables, which she kind of already touched on. The other question I had would be, what is the time? I saw you had a summer thing to have the draft ready, but when would actual advertisement occur, and what would that window look like, and who chooses this? Like, what is the process to advertise this opportunity and to sort of vet the applications and that sort of thing?
That's a great question, Mr. Chair. Again, our goal is to get this before the Board of County Commissioners on June 8th and immediately turn around to advertising this so that we can have all applications in by the beginning of August, and then Cindy will make all the decisions for us.
Wrong.
Okay, Cindy will not make all the decisions, but most of the decisions. We'll have a committee of staff, Mr. Chair, where Cindy will definitely be part of it, and we'll have other staff that reviews it, and then we'll bring back a recommendation to the board, hopefully by the second meeting in August to the board, so that they can make an award. That's the intent and goal. It all depends upon what the response is and how good of a job staff can do in terms of getting the word out and seeing what responses we get.
Well, and I want to follow up on what James was saying, is I think you probably would do some type of audit. I don't think it has to be detailed pictures. I also agree with the concept is that if they're in that dire need for capital, they need to get it purchased, within, I would go probably more to 120 days or something along that line. They can picture and document it, to you. I mean, I don't think it's the job to be the policeman, but to show that it's in place and they're actually using it, I think is something that's beneficial when people are skeptical about government and giveaways as well. I did have a couple of other small questions. One was related, and I didn't know for sure. So this person has to be a Alachua County resident, or they have to have their production in Alachua County, or neither? Or, well, I'm sure they have to be a Alachua County resident.
Yeah,
but
what we say is you do have to be an Alachua County resident. You cannot be a Springs County resident, unfortunately.
right. So the question is, it would be okay for a Alachua County resident who had a small operation in an adjoining county, they could be eligible for the money? Because I would think that you would probably want to say, not only Alachua County resident, but it's in Alachua County.
I would have to say that the intent is to help Alachua County residents and Alachua County farms.
I think you should spell that out.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is, no one's really broached it, but, and it's not a huge amount. And it goes back to this concept of having a business plan and stuff like that. If you want to leverage your money, and it's not gonna be a huge amount on $5,000 or $10,000, you make a small cost share. agreement. So, you know, if you're eligible for 500, I have no problems with the county, and I would suggest you might do it because it gives you sincere buy-in. Require a cost share of $500 or $1,000. That's 10 to 20%. They're getting 4 times for their little investment. If they aren't willing to invest that, they probably don't have any business plan or successful plan in place. And it's just a consideration. That would just be my personal thought.
What would be the threshold for the cost share again, sorry?
So it'd be 10 to 20%. So if they got 5,000, they would have to come up with 500 of their own money, which if you can't come up with 500, you know, and you're wanting to start a small business or you got one going, I think there's an indication there's a bigger problem there.
Okay. Very good.
But that's just my thoughts. Larry?
Couple of comments. I understand the idea of trying to support local small business farmers or small farmers. However, there are, and I'm not doing a commercial, but the organization I work for, our emphasis and we're part of the USDA program, is small beginning farmers, minority farmers. We have programs there that work with people like this. It appears to me that the county is going to be, again, competing with local businesses and other organizations, quasi-governmental organizations, that are already doing this and have the systems in place to require applications, monitoring, follow-up. The second point I have, we're talking about $10,000. I gotta believe that the administrative cost of this program would probably be 3 times that. I'm wondering how cost-effective something like this really is.
James?
James Longenecker. I have worked with a number of, or heard a lot of stories from people in these, pretty much like Black people and women and a lot of people who have a history of oppression in institutions don't feel comfortable going to larger institutions. And I know that the city is, and the county is, you know, quite a large one, but I guess I think that the more outreach, the better. And so this is a super tiny amount. If people find out about it through the county, through their outreach, then maybe in the future there could be, or now, before it rolls out, there could be some better conversation between the federal level or quasi-governmental organizations that are out there to let them handle it if it gets bigger. And then what I was going to say too is there's 2 things. One, the thing about younger farmers, I don't know, or beginning farmers, it's less than 10 years in production. Might want to add something like that to the list of owner and operator description. And then lastly, the cost share thing makes a lot of sense, but I know, for example, I know so many examples of people who, for example, okay, best one I have is St. John's River Water Management District did a cost share program for soil moisture sensors, and cash flow is tight. So depending on when the grant comes out, especially if there's some sort of time limit, coming up with $500 even in like a really viable farm business sometimes can be hard. So I don't know how you could work that, or if there could be some sort of different like goodwill display.
Kind.
Yeah, maybe in kind. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, cash flow can just be tight, I'd say. So.
Other comments from members here in the room?
This is Chris Tecubulis again. I was just,
Okay.
if I could get reminded where this money's coming from out of I know it's coming from tax money somewhere, but where are these monies being allocated from the county budget?
It is being allocated from fund number 001-17-1770-55282.53. That's the Economic Development Fund, sir. Source of funds, page 4.
I'm gonna ask, is there, yes, go ahead. No, go ahead, Judy.
I guess what keeps coming up to my mind is how could this involve something like the farmer's market, the people who were at the farmer's market, the vendors?
I think it would probably assist a grower, a farmer that is going to the farmer's market to sell their product. I think that would be one of the primary target recipients, is looking at those farmers. They have a small operation and they make some of their revenue off of going to local farmers markets. So they're actually going, not the kind of reseller portion of the farmer's market, the actual farmers that show up at the farmer's market. That's what we're interested in supporting.
I mean, these folks are just pandemic, put them out. They're still in.
Janet, you have anything you got a question about?
No, I just raised my hand earlier to concur with your suggestion on the cost share agreement, but I think including an in-kind option, most of the grants I'm familiar with include some sort of option.
Okay, any other comments, Ms. Werner? You've been quiet today. You got anything to say?
Not really. I missed the final comment that Jean made in closing, but couldn't hear it now.
Well, I just wondered, is there a way structurally?
I know some of these people that you're talking about, and, they stand on their own 2 feet and, it's a thing they're not asking for any handouts to help.
And that's what we might find out, when we put it out there on the street and there's little or no response or need for it, and then that's why you do a pilot. And you're asking, so this is a very modest way of going forward. And if no one submits an application, then no funds are expended. And we say, we look at some other opportunity area.
I just had a comment. Cindy Sanders. Sean, when, does this go to the county attorney for approval? Because I was just thinking about the auditing trail. I'm sure they'll have,
I'm sure they will.
Okay.
It'll go, it's part of the agenda item itself. It will.
okay. Yeah, it'll go to the,
Okay, I'm gonna ask, are there any questions from anyone who is online?
You mean the public?
Yes, the public, excuse me.
There's one member of the public online, but right now.
Okay, not hearing any response. Sean, hopefully this is giving you some feedback that may be useful to you going forward. Thanks for bringing it to our attention, give us a chance to make some suggestions and, come out and visit us occasionally with those initiatives for, rural areas.
Very appreciative. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're down to item number 7, on our agenda, which is review and discussing an upcoming schedule and topics. And I guess one of the issues I've brought up, and I've been on the committee now for about 3 years, and obviously, there's a couple of you that's been on a little bit longer than I have. But, we have met every month, either remotely or otherwise, since October, except for 1 month, I believe. And we had the Zoom bombing that occurred, the 1 month where we were cut short. Historically, there's been some time, because of summer activities and stuff like that, we've taken a pause, for a month and not had a meeting. And I guess, as we consider going forward on what we want to do, committee-wise, is there any preference? I mean, do you just want to keep meeting? Is there a time that's best for people for a pause?
So, Mr. Chair, just to
Yes,
give some more concreteness to that, your normal meeting date would be the third Tuesdays of the month, so that would be upcoming June 15th, July 20th, and I can't find August on my calendar. August 17th.
Larry?
Since we're only required to meet quarterly, I would, move that we not schedule an additional meeting until the third quarter, which would fall within the June, July, August quarter.
So your recommendation was have a
Have a meeting
one
in,
meeting during.
one meeting in the upcoming quarter.
And is there a preference on what month in that quarter, or? I mean, August will be back for some people, it's probably not gonna affect very many people, back to school type stuff, tends to be family vacations, there's lots of things. Is there a good time, a bad time?
The school starts on the 16th.
I'll throw out September, that'd be within the third quarter, that gets past vacations, school starting, unless there's something urgent that we need to talk about before then.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
The one item that you should be completing by October 1st, would be the, report on your accomplishments and your work plan for next year. That's a standard thing for advisory committees. It's possible, I guess, if you wanted to wait until September to take that up, and update that, it might spill over. Sometimes you do that and, it might take two meetings. I don't think it's really a major issue if it spills into October, but I'm just letting you know about that one.
right, that's a possibility, but I guess, Larry, you're just saying that have the third quarter, plan to meet in September, but we could still meet next month if we needed to.
Me too. I just don't see that we've got anything urgent on this list that needs us to meet every month.
Okay, other input from folks? Cindy?
I'll just say by September, we might have a place to meet. So.
Yes.
What about if we just meet next month and try and get that done, and then if we don't get it done, we can make arrangements for September?
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay.
I didn't realize we had homework when thinking about that, but that would be, I don't care. Just don't want it to, not get it done before October. I don't know how it goes.
So, Mr. Chair, if we're talking about the work plan, there are ways it's been done. It could include distributing to the committee the last work plan, ask the committee to look at that and be prepared to identify, modifications or things like that. The staff normally would document your accomplishments and put that on there. And then the main thing would be for the committee to update the goals for next year. So, just saying how that's worked with the committee before. There could be other ways to do it, but you could think in those terms also.
Okay, so, if it's okay with the committee, I'd like to make a suggestion, is I would say let's go ahead and meet in June, and then have the next meeting after that be the September meeting. And if there's no concerns about it, we will tentatively plan that September meeting for the new Alachua County Extension Office. And Cindy can advise us otherwise. Now, does everybody know where that's at? Because a lot of people, it's more towards Newberry than what you think. I mean, I actually measured up my house just over here in Hale, and it's 14 miles, so it's the same distance out there as it was over to the Alachua County Extension Office when it was on Northeast 39th Avenue. So it's out there a ways. But, does that sound like a plan for everyone? Because I think we've got a couple of things we can maybe do in June. And then that'll sort of give that summer break in case people need to have some time off in July and August for people if there's conflicts with families and vacations and startings of schools and stuff. And then that'll put us back into full operation mode by September. Hopefully, we might be able to talk a little bit about the upcoming plan of work in June, if there's something on there that we want to. So that can be an agenda item. I'm personally still, and I think I was the one when we talked about priorities who did this. We had asked for Commissioner Wheeler maybe to come back and talk about some stuff. And there was some stuff, maybe you guys know, there was some talk or discussion about some litter, additional funds being put in the budget. Do we know? I mean, that's not gonna be adopted until final will be September, I guess, but is that still the plan?
Maybe Ken Zeitler knows, I don't know the status of that right now.
What kind of funds? What was that about?
For the litter pickup, there was some talk about that being in the budget.
Yeah, I don't know the details on that. I had heard that there was some discussion at some point on that. We'd probably need to get that information from Ramon, I think, or
Well, the other issue was
Budget
that was
director.
the use of labor that came up. So she was in there. My personal impression is still it's very important for the advisory committees to show to the commissioners that we're actually looking at, considering, and recommending some stuff. Out of sight, out of mind. And now, Commissioner Prizia has been here several times before she was elected commissioner, but we've had no interaction at all with Commissioner Alford. And I would think it would be possible in June that we'd want to ask her where she sees priorities, concerns she might have in rural areas or areas dealing with agriculture, and work on the work plan. So I think it'd be easy to do a June meeting. But that would be my suggestion, and then I think we would take a break until for July and August, if that sounds okay with everyone.
Mr. Chair, any of those commissioners would be subject to their calendars, but I don't know what it is. So we'd have to, if you want us to check with the commission office about availability for a particular commissioner, we could do that.
We're gonna decide that in a second. So would you want to have Commissioner Wheeler back? It's difficult to get them here both at the same time because of discussion of topics before members of the board. But is there one of those issues, whether it's be asking Commissioner Wheeler to come back or ask Commissioner Alford to come for the first time and talk with us?
I just have a question.
Yes.
Do all commissioners have a copy of the worksheet? And maybe this would be a way to introduce Commissioner Alfred to have this and say, what does she see as priority on the list of things that we have already discussed? Mr. Thought.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can do it. I mean, I'm just, Mr. Martin?
Mr. Chair, I don't believe that their sunshine violation applies here. You're having a public meeting that's got published agenda and published meeting minutes. So they can meet here together and talk about things.
I'm not sure about that, Mr. Morton. I think we'd have to check with our county attorney.
Has to be declared as county commission meeting.
That's why they have county attorneys.
Yeah.
I don't always agree with the county attorneys, but that's why they get to sort of make the final say on that. So,
Behind.
Ms. Hearns?
Oh, since you were asking for input, if we can only invite one commissioner, I think my preference would be to invite Commissioner Alford, because she's new, and not at all familiar.
Okay, so let's see if we can move this forward. Do we have a plan to have a June meeting with two primary topics? And the topics would be asking Commissioner Alford to come and meet with the committee. And two is to start looking at the plan of work and follow-up discussions for the next fiscal year.
So move.
Second.
So, Mr. Hall moved it, Ms. Chance, seconded. All those in favor, and Krista Cubulus, you can't vote, so we're leaving you out on this one, but all those here in the room who are members of the Rural Concerns Committee, in favor of that motion indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, it passed 8-0.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question? If there's a conflict, specifically for Commissioner Alford, do you have a second commissioner? And sometimes the conflict might affect both of them, but do you want us to, if she has a conflict at that time, do you want us?
So what I would personally prefer to do is if we could ask her sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So it's a month out, so if we can get her, if we can get the ask out next week.
Well, we can
find
follow up with the commission, executive assistant, I think, tomorrow, assuming she's in, and she will check calendars.
Okay, and I think we may want to go back and on at least a couple of these issues, Sean's gonna be moving forward with his, he wants to move it to the commission, I think you said by the June meeting. But I think we can go back, and I would put the other agenda item in June is digest what we heard on the Springs County presentation and what other information it might be useful to us as we think about issues related to that. Because Larry brought up today, you know, if there's somehow we could figure out how to bring the parties together or different things like that. We talked about some of the data might be interesting to sort of see and stuff like that, so.
Yeah, I think as the advisory committee to the county commission on rural concerns, I think that's something that we should explore further.
Okay. So do we have the agenda then for the June meeting, and then we'll plan on taking a break for July and August? And Cindy will keep us in the loop, but we will have a plan on September meeting at the new county extension office out off Newberry Road.
I have a comment.
We've got a couple of things we've got to do before we can adjourn. Okay, Cindy?
You might have been fixing to do what I was gonna do. Right, Dr. Klaus.
Go ahead.
I just want to say that, I don't know if any of y'all know it, but Ken Zeichner is retiring, and this is our last, Rural Concerns Committee meeting with Ken. And so Ken's not here to celebrate with us, but I did bring little cupcakes, so you can pick one up on the way out in honor of Ken Zeichner that's not here.
I'm here remotely.
And we do want to thank you for all your effort with the group. And, you know, so for those of us who like small cupcakes, if you could retire every month for the next 6 months and make the meetings more enjoyable.
Snack.
So we can have a snack.
Thank you, Cindy.
So,
I'll enjoy it vicariously. Ken can let me know how they taste. Regina, too.
and one last thing, and it doesn't look like there's any public online, but I was going to give one more general public opportunity. And Krista Cubulus, anything you want to add online? Comment about before we go?
No, I think everything's good. I enjoyed both presentations.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
And
Mr. Chair.
just remember just a second. Just remember, Chris, going forward, if we're going to vote on the issues, you won't be able to vote if you're not here in person with the new county rule.
Who knows what happens next with the rules? And, you know, if you're meeting at the new center, presumably that's got the remote capability too, at least to participate for the public.
Okay,
So,
Ken's out there.
Yeah, I just want to mention, remind You had a member who prompted us on another grant opportunity, which was the distance learning and telemedicine. I think that was Mr. Salvo. We sent information out about that a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you want to say anything more about that, Mr. Salvo?
One thing, I mean, I sent it out, they open and close pretty fast, so they open in May and they close in June. So basically, anybody can apply to it, for-profit, non-profit, university, counties, municipalities, and it's on anything, like a telehealth workstation at a clinic, or books for kids, or virtual tablets for kids in the library. So, I know Putnam has done it, Lee County has used them, pretty easy grant to do through the USDA, so you can encourage your community members to take advantage of it.
Right. So the committee got an email with that, including a link to the website with the information. It looked to me like most of I mean, it could be a very large grant. Most of the applicants for projects under that before have been either medical or educational, along with perhaps local governments or some entity that actually has internet facilities. But if you go back, you can see that there was an email about that gives some information about it.
So my question that has always been about this group, if we get a piece of information like that, how do we distribute it, or can we distribute it, or do we assume somebody else is?
You could approach, if contact Regina, if you have something you'd like to go to the committee. And I mean, if it's something like that, that's an information item, we could send it out blind copy. If it's more sort of a substantive discussion item for the committee, that'd probably be something that we would bring to your attention at a notice meeting.
Yeah, I was thinking about more with the short turnaround. Our assumption is that the schools, the cities, the municipalities, all those other people have seen it and know about it.
You talk about that grant?
Yeah, is that a
Yeah,
fair?
probably. I'd hope so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just wonder how we distribute the information. So the next meeting is June, what's that date again?
I think June 15th, right? Ken?
I'm looking.
Yes.
I think it's June 15th.
Third Tuesday.
Okay, we'll plan on
15th,
June.
and then September 21st.
Yes, we'll plan on June 15th back in this facility, and then hopefully September 21st at the new Alachua County.
And September 21st on my calendar is Peace Day. Should be good.
Now, Jean, would you like to make a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Jean Chances, move to adjourn. Is there a second?
Okay.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for the opportunity to serve you all.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Ken.
Ken.
Yes.
Happy retirement. Every day is Saturday.
So,